All right, so public servants associated with the PSA union down tools across the country today. At issue is the 3% wage increase offered by government, which workers say is an insult. eNCA reporters have been on the ground following developments. Let's bring in Heidi, Giokos and Mchunu, who have been working the story in Johannesburg. Heidi, I'm going to start with you because you spoke to the PSA. There seems to be some confusion even within the PSA about what their demands are, because they started out at 10%, then dropped it to 6.5%. But today we heard talk of 10% demands again. Tell us more.
Yes, so Sally, I think initially the demand was 10% salary increase, and it seems as though because of the discussions and negotiations with government, the PSA decided to drop this to 6.5%. I've asked the PSA once more, is it 6.5% or is it 10%? And they've told me that initially it was 10%, and because government was not budging, they decided to drop it to 6.5%. But the initial and the actual demand that is on the table right now is 10% salary increase. The PSA has, of course, confirmed this. We'll listen to what the President told us earlier on today, but that is the main demand here. And the reason for this is because they feel as though public servants have not received a salary increase in the past 3 years. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic threw a span in the works for public servants. We also do know that government has been at pains to try and drop the public wage bill. It's been highlighted a number of times as it's been ballooning. They need to bring it under control. Government says it does not have money. Its purse is stretched. However, the Public Servants Association says this is unacceptable. It is not true that government has money. It rather loots the money, and there's a number of corruption scandals at play here, and workers are being neglected. Let's listen to what the presidents of the PSA had to tell us about what their demands are and why they're not backing down.
We demand a single-term wage agreement. As we know that the employer, every time we sign a multi-term, they don't honor the promise. So we demand 10% across the board because, our members are hit hard by the hike of fuel, prices of food are going up. Inflation is very high. Hence, we demand 10% across the board. 3% is an insult to public servants who are working very hard, who have not received any decent increase over the last 3 years. So we are not demanding much.
Heidi, what is PSA saying about turnout today and any possible impact on sort of Home Affairs officers, licensing departments?
The PSA says there is some kind of impact, given that hundreds of their members marched today to National Treasury. What's interesting, Sally, is that when we were leaving Pretoria and National Treasury, and when we were heading to Pretoria this morning, the Home Affairs queue at the Department of Home Affairs in Pretoria, the queue was very long, and normally it is quite long, and we normally see many people outside Home Affairs. Sometimes it seems as though that system is rather slow. But today it looked rather longer, and this possibly could be because of the impact of this Public Servants Association march and protest. So it seems as though there might be some kind of impact. When we engaged with the PSA, they told us that of course, essential services would not be impacted. But I think what's also going to be crucial is to find out whether or not any schooling was disrupted. The matrics are writing exams at this stage, so we'll just have to wait and see. But it seems as though Home Affairs officers might have been affected, as well as licensed departments as well.
All right, so let's have a listen. I know you spoke to a couple of workers. Let's have a listen to what they had to say.
We haven't got increase for the past 3 years now. Plus, if they robbed us in 2020, you're supposed to get our teachers increment, never give it us. And also they want to implement unilaterally the 3%. Where's the purpose of a bargaining council? They're not bargaining here. Where's bargaining?
What can we do with 3%? They must not play with us. The worst part, they are giving themselves. I mean, our government, they are giving huge sums of money to themselves. Are they saying we deserve 3% of all the work that we are doing? Please, they must just make their mind. We need 10%.
Now is the time that we show the government that we are really serious. because even if they can implement whatever they want to implement, that does not affect us. We want our monies like yesterday. We have never had an increase. They expect us to be at work on a daily basis, but they are giving us slavery salary. That is not acceptable. You cannot give as public servant 3%, give them 3% of the executive. You must balance the wage level.
All right, so let's now bring in, thanks for that, Heidi. Let's bring in Nqobile Madlala, who's in Durban. Nqobile, good evening to you. You've been covering events in Durban. What are workers there saying?
Well, Sally, they're saying that they need the money, that 6.5 would make a difference, even though they feel that it's below inflation at this point. They're saying that the 3%, which they've already received via their pay, is something that they were not waiting for because there's no agreement between the government as well, between the government and the union. They're saying that at this point, they feel like there's been an undermining of the bargaining council as well as what has been spoken about, because at this point they are receiving the 3% without agreeing to it. But they're saying that 6.5 is what they are hoping for. It would be even better if it was 7% because that would make a huge difference. But you would know, Sally, cost of living has been going high. We have seen a number of people saying that they are worried about cost of living, and they are also not exempt from that. They're saying that as public servants, they also deserve to have to be able to pay things like school fees, to be able to pay their insurance and so on. And at this point, they're feeling like they're losing quite a lot because instead of getting any increment, they have to continue to fight to get anything from the government. Let's listen in.
The 3% is not helping our public servants at all because you can't do anything. Medical aid has increased, transport has increased, everything has increased, so the 3% can't meet our salaries.
And we can't trust this government now because remember in 2020 they were not able to implement what was agreed upon in terms of the salary agreement that was in 2018. Now we are saying enough is enough with this government that is corrupt and eating our money.
Sisebenza kanzima sabasebenzi bakahulumeni uhulumeni kodwa yena anakho ukusicabangela ngokunjalo njengoba ngila ngiyimember yaka PSA nginezikhalazo eziningi.
We are ready ukuthi siseklishe at least for 6.5 because 3% lwesunika uhulumeni usithuke ngenhlamba. It's very low. Mubuka ama cost of living, they are very high. Upetrol ukhuphukile, izinto esitolo zikhuphukile, asisakwazi ngisho ukunakekela izingane zethu, emakhaya ethu kuyalanjwa, imoto zethu basho kuyirepossessa ngenxa kalo hulumeni osidelelile kuyimanje nje ufakile amakinati akhe emholweni wethu, asiyazi nanokuthi soyenzani le mali asifakele yona.
Nqobile, we know that this is a PSA strike, but there are other unions present. You spoke to one of them. Tell us more.
Yes, Sally. In fact, when we started in the morning with PSA, we saw some of the unions also coming in saying that they're throwing their weight behind what PSA is saying. That was Hospesa that came in. But also later on, we saw SAFTU, which is quite concerning, Sally, because SAFTU, you would know that it's a teachers' union. So they said also that they're at a point where they feel like they're being neglected, like they're not being heard. So they are understanding what PSA is going through. And at this point, they are in solidarity with what PSA is saying. And therefore, they're saying at this point, if the presidency as well as the premier in KwaZulu-Natal does not come back to PSA in 7 days, which they've given them, they are going to make sure that they down tools and they go back to the streets. And SAFTU is saying that they are going to be joining them. Let's listen in.
From now, it's a warning shot, as I've said. It's a warning shot. The big thing is coming. We're going to strike this year. We cannot tolerate this government, the arrogance they've shown to us as Abasebenzi. We cannot tolerate it. They left the bargaining council. They went to the constitutional court to defend the non-implementation of the last leg of Resolution 1 of 2018. And this year, they left the bargaining council. They went to the public. They left the offer in the table. That was the 3% offer on baseline, and that cash gratuity they are telling us about. They're saying this cash fresh graduate is converted into 4.5%. But they don't convert it in the bargaining council. They convert it in the public. They are telling the public that by Asizama 7.5%. But in the document there is written 3%. Where is that 7.5% they are talking about?
All right, and just a point of clarification, SAFTU, of course, is the South African Federation of Trade Unions, not linked to any teacher unions. We know that the teaching unions have actually agreed, and one of the big decisions that they made is that they don't want to be involved in any strike action purely because of wanting to look after the matrics, which I think is very commendable, and our teachers have been through a lot. So that's very interesting that we're seeing federations such as SAFTU, and we're also seeing Hospersa showing their support. Nothing from COSATU at this point, but nevertheless, very interesting indeed. That's the picture from Durban. Thank you very much. Manqoba, I'm going to bring you in. You, of course, were also covering from Johannesburg, but you were looking at the possible impact in terms of visiting the various Home Affairs departments. You have spoken to government. They have sent out a message that it was pretty much business as usual. What are they saying? What have you seen?
Well, certainly government saying that there haven't been any major disruptions as far as operations are concerned at the various departments. And certainly we have been to quite a number of departments from Home Affairs as well as, licensing departments and, the Department of Labour, just to assess the situation as far as the impact is concerned. And I can tell you, Sally, that from the places that we visited in Johannesburg as well as in Soweto, it was business as usual. We do know, of course, that some of the places or some of the offices had been operating under skeleton staff due to the fact that some of the PSA workers were part of that strike. But as far as operations are concerned, the government saying that there were no major hiccups, there were no disruptions to services. And in fact, when we went to this particular Home Affairs department where we are earlier this morning, so I can tell you that we saw long queues of people waiting to be serviced, and we saw them being attended by the officials at this particular department. And we also saw a similar picture when we went to Johannesburg and Soweto at the various Home Affairs departments. So it doesn't seem that there was much of an impact as far as operations are concerned. But what we did note, Sally, that was a bit of a hiccup is the Department of Labour in Johannesburg, where we saw some of the workers coming out of the offices and picketing outside of the offices. But also there was a fire that was reported there earlier on, which led to some of the workers being brought out of the building, some of them choosing to go back to work, while others then joined the picket line. But as far as we understand, Sally, the Department of Public Administration saying that there hasn't been any major hiccups, there hasn't been any major effects as far as this is concerned. But earlier on, I did speak to the spokesperson, and this is what he had to say.
From the Department of Public Service and Administration, what we have observed today is that it has been a normal day. Officials were at work, and a register was circulated in the morning for managers to account for their staff members. And again at 2:30, we have not experienced any disruptions. And if for any reason there has been an office that is not operating, the manager in that office will have to account and indicate the reasons for staff members not being at work. Because as we have communicated, members of the PSA are only allowed to picket during lunchtime and tea time. And for any reason that they were not at work, they will be subjected to no work, no pay.
I mean, it's going to be interesting, isn't it, Manqoba, because what's happening today, if there is no response from government, if there's no resolution to these wage demands within 7 days, they are promising more mass action, more strikes. So today was an important flexing of muscle, in a way, for the Public Servants Association. And we also know that COSATU has not resolved their wage dispute with government either. So an important day all round. We, of course, have also received reports that there were a few Home Affairs offices that simply didn't open at all. So it's going to be very interesting to see what actually comes out of this, isn't it?
Indeed, Sally, and we know, of course, that this is an important issue for these public servants who are saying that they simply cannot afford, the rising cost of living. And so it will be very important, Sally, but I think importantly is whether or not we would see COSATU affiliates joining this particular impasse. We know, of course, that the PSA is only but one of the unions that are in the public service. So it will be interesting to see, Sally, how this will pan out. But of course, the PSA saying that they're not going to back down, Sally, until those demands are met. And that's a sense that we're also getting from some of the workers that we spoke to who didn't want to speak on camera, Sally, who are saying that they're not going to let this go up until government accedes to those demands. And of course, the biggest concern right now, Sally, is whether or not there will be an impact. We know that we're heading to the festive season and a lot of people will be needing services like the licensing departments. They'll be needing services from the Home Affairs Department to sort out some of their travel arrangements and some of their travel documents. So it will be interesting to see, Sally, whether they can be able to meet each other, perhaps to try and find a resolution before this happens, because there are fears that this might also disrupt some of the people in their plans ahead of the festive season.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to all three of you for bringing us those various different points on the story from Durban. Nqobile Madlala, thank you so much. Manqoba, Mchunu here in Johannesburg, and of course Heidi, Giokos, focusing on the PSA itself. Thanks very much to all three.